Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. I am here with our guest today, Craig Lane. My partner, Chris, won't be with us today. He's handling some business, and so you just got me. So, Craig, talk to us about you, man. Introduce yourself. Tell us what you're doing now, and so forth.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go all the way back. Grew up in Boise, Idaho. Went to Boise State University, and
Okay.
I was a secondary education major at the time. I needed an internship as a sophomore, so I found something in strength and conditioning with the athletic department. Loved that, and I just kept coming back. They didn't tell me to go away once that semester was over. Changed my major, and I've been in sports performance ever since. So I went from there up to Seattle once I graduated with my master's degree and got a job in hockey. Did that until COVID hit. COVID hit, I got furloughed. I was living in Seattle, was making no money. Just purging money up there. Yeah, it was rough.
That's all of us, man. I mean,
yeah, it was rough. And I had kids, right? I had 4 kids at the time, so I had to find something. Ended up with a job in Arizona working with a youth hockey team, and through that job, I met a guy who was working with Phoenix Rising, which is a USL soccer team. That's Tier 2.
Okay.
American soccer. So like MLS would be Tier 1. Major League Soccer, Seattle Sounders, Minnesota. What's that?
I said I'm familiar with the USL. I used to own and operate the on the women's side. So I had
what team is it still around?
No, it's not around anymore. But it was Carolina Cobras.
Oh, nice. Yeah. USL soccer is so fun because it's the fan. It's like a little more low key, a little more casual, but it's still really high level soccer.
Yeah.
And the teams do a great job putting the games on.
Yeah, one of the things I like most about it, I liked most about it, was the willingness to be fan centric.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was always about the fans' experience because I'm just going to be into it as an owner operator. If you got into it for money, you were in it for the wrong reason. All you hope to do was, all you hope to do was, take care of players, get them opportunities at the next level, and hopefully, hopefully break even.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about Phoenix Rising a lot is our stadium was I think it was 8,000-9,000 really good supporters. I mean, the fans were into it. We'd see our guys play for us and then go on to bigger things somewhere. We had a guy go off to play in Germany and a couple guys go to MLS. And then you can watch them play all over the place. It's a cool environment to be in USL. So
I agree with that.
I came on as the sports scientist for them. They had their GPS units and force plates and all that, and they weren't doing anything with them. They were collecting the data, but then it was just, here's the data. There wasn't anything that was done with it. So I came on as their sports scientist. My boss there was a guy named Sean. He became the director of performance for Minnesota United, and then he brought me along with him to Minnesota. So I've been with Minnesota United for the past 2 seasons as their sports scientist here, and loving it.
Yeah. So as you kind of grown in the profession, and especially with the sports science side, talk to us a little bit about how it was when you started, how it is now, and where you think it needs to be.
Yeah. All right, so I made a very intentional decision to get into sports science. Before I always did strength and conditioning. My degrees are in strength and conditioning, and that's what I was. I was a strength and conditioning coach, and I saw the writing on the wall that sports science right now is where strength and conditioning was 20, 30 years ago. Right? It's really in its infancy. So I made that intentional decision. I emailed one of my professors and said, "Hey, what do I do if I want to make this switch from strength and conditioning to sports science?" And he said, you've got the education and the knowledge, but learn how to code, learn statistics. And I thought that's some weird advice. What does that have to do with performance? Right. But took that advice, started kind of teaching myself on my own how to code, watching some videos and classes online about statistics. And then it was funny because when I got the opportunity then with Phoenix Rising, my initial program I put together, my initial information that I gave them was so bland. It was nothing. It was just, hey, here's what we did. And one of my biggest pet peeves in sports science is and you'll see this a lot online, is people trying to make a name for themselves, which is great. Do that and showcase your skills and your talents. But it's, hey, look at this pretty graph I made. Look at this fancy chart that I made. I spoke at the South Dakota Clinic for the NSCA back in December, and I told them that I will take the ugly chart, the ugly data and dashboard that gives me actionable insights over the most professional, good-looking, interactive dashboard that just gives you information.
It's all about getting data you can do something with.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying is when I first started, like I took this advice from my professor and I learned how to code a little bit and I learned statistics. And then when I started putting things together, I was just giving them information. I was just giving them, okay, here's what we did today. And I fell into that trap of just building a nice, pretty dashboard, building a nice, pretty report. And it didn't provide any valuable information. It was just, here's what we did today. So it took me a minute to figure out this doesn't matter. Who cares what we did today in this moment right here? How does this affect us as a whole?
Right. What does it mean?
What does it mean? We're 3 days away from a game. Here's what we've done throughout the week, and here's what's coming up. How do we prepare for that game? Right. So I kind of had to redefine how I thought about sports science. And I have an analogy I use to explain it to people who don't really understand. For my mom, right? Who doesn't really understand what I do.
Gotcha.
Sports science to me is finding that Goldilocks zone between too much exposure and not enough. Right? And we need to find that balance between a good example that I use is sprint distance, right? If we don't sprint enough, if we're not exposed to sprints enough during the week, we're going to lose it. Right. Or we're going to be exposed to injury. If we get too much exposure, we're going to be exposed to injury, right? So we got to find that happy medium. And that's where I think that sports science is generally, right? That's a really simple explanation of where I see sports science, and then providing actionable insights of here's where we are and here's where we need to get to. Here's our actionable insights that we need to take.
I like that sprint analogy. Because it's simple if you're coaching a sprinter and you don't have to be the world's greatest coach to know that, we have a meet today and we have a meet next Saturday. I can't not sprint in between those times.
Right.
But I can't sprint too much in between those times either. So how much is that? And what gives me the most feedback? While I'm, is it a short sprint? Is it a medium sprint? Is it a long sprint? What gives me the most feedback? And on top of that, what can I do with it?
Yeah. And it's everything in sports science these days is done in the name of load management, right? Well, sometimes we need more load. And I think we very rarely look at it through that lens. I'm glad it's always, let's go easier.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think some of the injuries in some sports, I'm not going to start rattling off sports, but some of the injuries in some sports is because of load management. We got to manage the load. They're doing, and it's always, we got to manage the load, but it seems like the load never goes up. Mm-hmm. It always keeps going down. And then all of a sudden you're playing a game and you're not doing anything and you're playing a game. Yeah. Or you're playing a game and you're doing a walkthrough on Wednesday and then you're playing a game. That's tough. That's tough to deal with as the human body to deal with.
Yeah, well, because you need a stimulus to create an adaptation.
Adaptation, exactly.
That's your freshman level physiology, right? And so I was lucky. I think about this a lot in return to play, and I was lucky that at Minnesota United we had some really great physical therapists and athletic trainers who understood that here was where we are this week, and here's where we need to get to. We got to up that load, right?
Yeah,
we're not going to recover from this injury if we're not giving them a stimulus to recover.
Right.
The other rest is not always the answer.
The other part of it is, I'm sure as your time and having entered into performance as a strength coach, we need to rethink conditioning.
Yeah.
Because a lot of how sports are conditioning now have little to do with the sport, and everything goes back to load management. Well, we don't want to do too much. Well, they're not going to make the adaptation, and they're not going to give you what you're asking for on the field because you haven't conditioned them to do that or maintained your conditioning. Some of it is you've lost conditioning, you've gone back, you've deconditioned, however we want to say it, because we refuse to up the load, so to speak, or condition correctly. A nice slow jog may feel good for, moving out waste and all kind of stuff like that, but not going to do anything for a wide receiver that's got another game, or a soccer player, who's got a sprint, jog, run, explode, change directions. Nice slow jog. Okay, let's move some waste out. Let's relax a little bit, but don't call it conditioning.
Yeah, there was you haven't heard it much recently, but like zone 2 was all the rage the last couple of years, right? Zone 2 training. You could do zone 2 training forever and it has all these improvements. Yeah, to a certain point, right?
Right.
You're going to plateau. You're going to hit a level, a ceiling, sorry. You've got to condition to this. And I've kind of flip-flopped on this a little bit throughout my career too, is when I was in hockey, my mindset was, okay, you're going to get your conditioning in training and in practice and in games. You don't really need to do that. But that's just not always the case. And a perfect example is, it's just the effort that people put in. I can think of one kid on our team at Minnesota United who is going to be the hardest worker in every training and every game. And he's probably going to have some good conditioning. Some other guys are going to need some supplemental work. And we monitor that to see what heart rate zones they're in, how far they've gone, what that at high intensities. And they've got to be supplemented.
Yeah, it really does boil down to each individual athlete. But once we determine what the needs are of the sport, we can figure that out. That's what we went to school for. Yeah. That's what we get hired for. What does the sport require? It's each individual athlete where it becomes, you got to really pay attention and you got to say, well, Sarah's not getting down the field on these breakaways because she doesn't sprint enough. Well, how do you know that? Well, here's my data. Everybody else is doing this, in practice, and she's doing this. She needs to push a little harder, or she doesn't know how to sprint. So we need to pull her off to the side and run some sprints and do some coaching.
That's what I was just going to say. That's exactly what my report that I give to coaches says. Is it's on the third page of it. It's 3 pages. It's just basically a table of here's each athlete and here's what they need to work on. Sometimes an athlete may not even show up on there because they're good, right? We've gone through as a staff, as a performance staff, and defined where we want people to be. And they're all individualized thresholds, individualized metrics that we want this player to be at this point on this day of the week and this player to be there. And my report will then show, boom, this guy's below where he needs to be. Or this guy, because this is something I give to people right at the end of the day, after training, after lunch. I'll sit down with our coaching staff, our performance staff, our medical staff, and go over this. So it's those actionable insights for the next day. What are we looking at tomorrow? This guy's way overboard. He went so hard today. Maybe he can do the first drill. Maybe he can do the second drill. I would have him step out in the third drill and kind of manage load in that sense. These two guys, they've hardly moved this week. They've hardly done any sprints.
They need all of the drills.
They need everything and maybe more afterwards. Right. And so it's all specific and individualized to each athlete that way. You can look at it positionally too, and it usually lines up positionally because of the drills that are selected. Sometimes your center backs are going to get way more movement than your, strikers or whatever. You can break it down in multiple different ways, but in the end, it's got to be individualized for that athlete.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, I think we're getting back to now with guys like yourself realizing, hey, this data's all good, but, in a big mass group, it doesn't tell us a lot.
Yeah.
If it's individualized, it tells us more. I think we got away from the individual, the focus on the individual athlete. And I'm going to say, because I'm way older than you are, I'm going to say between 2005 and 2015, the focus was on training the group. And then the smart guys came along like yourself and started realizing, hey, maybe we ought to break this up a little bit because everybody's not the same. Well, we knew that, and we focused on that in late 90s, early 2000s. But everything's cyclic, that everything does this. You get this better, but then you got to go back and catch this up. You get that better, you got to go back and catch this up. So there's no fault or anything to that statement that I'm making or trying to rub grease on somebody's axle or off of it. It's just a note. We're back to everything needs to stay focused on the athlete, and then when we start to do things, it's based on the need of the sport or the position in the sport.
Yeah, and that varies widely too, positionally.
Yeah.
And the system that we've got a new coach this year, but the system we ran last year, our D-men would not, their high intensity efforts were much lower just based on the system that we ran.
Right.
Right. It's different now. And that changes with coaching staffs, of course.
Yeah.
But positionally, things are going to be different. You can't train that as a whole and expect everybody to have the same results.
Yeah. You just can't. And why are we training? Just, I don't know that it's being done. I'm just saying, hypothetically, why would we train goalkeepers like we train midfielders?
Yeah. When everybody's doing the same. Yeah.
When everybody's doing the same thing, then it becomes, now I understand the camaraderie and the teamwork. You all come together and you do the footwork drills in the ladder, or you all come together and you do, that's different. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the real needs of the goalie.
Yep.
The goalkeeper needs some specific things, and they need time to execute those. And they're not going to get it out there standing in the box while the midfielders run around up at the midfield.
Yeah,
they're not going to get it.
And I don't know. You see it a lot, especially I think more in the weight room where everybody just does the same workout. It's the team lift.
Yeah.
And there's reasons people do this, right? For the flow and the administration and management of all that. But there's ways that you can do it where you've got your big lifts that everybody needs to do. We're all part of the team. These are the specific lifts for our sport that we need to do. But then we can break off positionally. A goalkeeper does not need to be doing the same lifts as a field player.
Right. It's,
and there's ways to manage that. There's ways to manage that and make it work. But I think often it's just the easy way out.
Let's be real. Yeah, you're right. A lot of times it is. It's a time thing. It's an effort thing. It's a flow thing. You got it all. But let's be real. Sometimes the goalkeeper needs to be a lot more explosive and a little heavier.
Yes.
To take the banging they're going to get when everybody all of a sudden is in front of the net. Maybe your forward gets a little bit of that, but your midfielders are a little leaner.
Yeah, there was. I wish I could remember right now. It was a replay I saw 2 weeks ago. I think it was LA Galaxy, but their keeper made 3 incredible saves in a row, and it was just boom, diving this way, get up, boom, diving that way, boom, diving this way, like instantly, no time to think, no time. He just had to react.
Yeah,
right. That's a different kind of training than what most field players are going to get.
Yeah. That's a whole, different perspective of explosion and being explosive. That's movement and explosiveness all wrapped in a tight little package because you got to be able to get up off the ground. Yeah. And that's not something you need to think about.
There's no time to think about.
You're not out there thinking about, so that reaction time and that type of explosiveness to oftentimes come all the way back across or a good distance back across the face of the goal, to make a block. Yeah, I didn't see that, but I can imagine it in my head right now. It's just like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, there's no time. And you have to be explosive. I mean, these are big movements that he's covering a lot of ground in a really short time.
Yeah.
That's power. You've got to train that.
Yeah, there's no way you get away with that just being what I'm saying is way back in the day, the long, lanky goalkeeper that didn't have a lot of explosive. No downgrade on them. No ill will towards that person out there being what the coach asked him to be. But it's kind of a new game, whereas, the forwards are a lot more explosive. The ball's coming at a lot higher rate. You have to be able to react and move, and that requires a certain level of strength and a different type of training.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point. Maybe I'm going to shift topic here, but that's a trend that we're seeing across soccer now, is that those high explosive movements, those high intensity movements are increasing across all levels. And if you're stuck in the just constantly moving and staying in that aerobic area, you're going to be behind. Right? Because the game is changing. We're seeing a change right now. If you look over the last 5-10 years, it's a different game than it was. Right. So being able to understand that, knowing that, and adapting your training to that is crucial.
And I believe, a lot of that change has come because of the type of players the women's national team had. They were that type of player. I don't know that they chose them on purpose, but it proved to be a successful style of athlete, that maybe didn't steady state, up and down the field, but man, were they explosive and were they strong. And that a lot of times was the difference. And you've seen the training start to shift, back in those times I was talking about, 6, 7, 8, 12, 14. The training was starting to be like you're talking about, more explosive, maybe a little shorter duration and a higher intensity level, those kind of things. And I think what you just discussed, what you're seeing in soccer nowadays across the board, all positions, is that, they are more explosive. There is a little bit more. They look like stronger athletes. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
They look like stronger athletes. They don't just look like somebody who can run a 5K.
Yeah. Yes. That's a perfect example. Yeah. If you go watch an EPL game or a Bundesliga, these guys are athletes, right?
Yeah.
They're not cross country runners. They're athletes. Yeah. I mean, they've got legs, they've got triceps and biceps. I mean, these guys are built and purposefully built to play the position and be who they want to be, or be who they need to be.
And to put it mildly, not shy either.
No.
The physicalness of the men's game, I like, because it's gotten better, and I like it because I think it brings more of the game into the game, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yep, and I think I'm going to address this because it's something that I didn't grow up playing soccer. I didn't. I'm the typical American. Soccer really didn't interest me.
Yeah, didn't interest me until my daughter started playing.
Yeah, now that I'm in it, right? It's a different view. And I think that one thing that people don't like is the faking of injuries, right?
Oh, I
can tell you, having been in medical meetings every day, seeing these players walking around the locker room and stuff, most of them are not
faking.
Right? Not faking it. I was at one game where I got a text message from my sister. She was in Idaho watching our game, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's the biggest fake I've ever seen." And this thing happened like 30 feet away from me on the field. I was like, "No, he's not faking it. Like, he's injured." And these guys, it's a collision sport. It's a physical sport. And does it happen? Yes, of course it happens. Everybody knows that. But the physicality of the sport is something people don't realize.
Yeah, to think that the game of soccer is played without touching each other and just jabbing your leg in for the ball.
Yeah,
that's a whole different. That's a misunderstanding that still goes on today.
Yeah,
and in some ways it's coached. But you can be physical without committing egregious fouls. And I've seen it done, and men's and women's, soccer. And what I say now today about what you just discussed is that the men are getting better at that. I don't think there's near as much theatrics as there has been. So some of the hits they're taking are real. I mean, there was more theatrics back in the day, so to speak, back in the
Yep.
teens, early teens, and late aughts.
Yep.
But I think it was as the worm was turning and the game was becoming more physical. That was the gamesmanship. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
okay, well, if you're going to be physical, we can't match you there. We're just gonna, we'll match you over here.
Yeah. And it certainly still happens. I'm not saying it doesn't
Yeah,
happen, but
yeah.
people just don't realize that soccer is a physical sport. We have a game on Saturday. These guys come in Monday and they're beat up.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
our training room is packed. It is a physical sport.
And it's a long sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's you play a lot of games, a
Oh, yeah.
lot of games, even in like the second tier games. That's a lot. How many games you guys play?
It's 36 or
Yeah,
something, but then
yeah.
league games. But then we also there was a friendly the other day.
Friendly and a
There's US
tournament.
Open Cup. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of games that aren't on the MLS schedule that we could end up playing. Like if you look at LAFC, they probably played almost 50 games last year.
Yeah, that's a lot of games,
it's
man.
a lot. Yeah.
That's
It's the way MLS is set up too. Like the championship is either late November or early December, and then training camp starts in January.
yeah.
You get 3-4 weeks off.
So you got a long seasons, a lot of games,
Mm-hmm.
and on top of that, it's not like football where you're playing one game a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's more like golf where you may be
games.
you may be in 3 tournaments in a golf, and they say
Right.
they say, "Oh, we're getting worn out." Well, we just played 3 soccer games.
Yeah. And we're running 6.5 miles each game.
Yeah. And at least a third of that at a dead sprint.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're just barely recovering by the time the next game pops up.
Yeah.
So yeah, man,
Yep.
it's
a lot.
That's a bunch, and I'm glad you brought that up because we don't that's not something that's thought about a lot outside the game of soccer. How much it's grown, how much physically it's grown.
Yeah.
A lot of people still see the same thing, whether it's true or not. They still see, you're not supposed to touch him. That's a foul. Well, you have to go a long ways to commit a foul, or they could call one every time up and down the field.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us. Talk to the audience a little bit about. I like to do these comparisons, but when you were your biggest thing you learned when you were a young professional, and why it's either the same or not the same now. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And there's an immediate answer that pops into my mind. I've always been like a happy, bubbly, outgoing type of person, right? When I graduated and got my first job and all this, I don't know why. And maybe it was the time. This was the 2013, 2014, around then.
Right.
I just thought as the strength and conditioning coach, as a performance guy, I had to be this hard nosed. You're doing this. You don't, there's no exceptions. You're doing it my way or the highway type of guy. And, quite honestly, I hated it. I thought that's who I had to be. I thought that's what a performance coach was.
Right.
And it's no fun in the weight room. It's all business. I'm gruff and I'm angry and I'm this rough guy. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And it took me some time to realize that I could be myself and be more successful. I could be myself in the weight room and be a successful performance coach. I could laugh and joke and have fun. But
doesn't mean you're not serious.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is still have the ability to instill in these guys that, okay, now it's time to work, right? Okay, we can joke and laugh, but we got to work too, And so for me, that was kind of the biggest shift in how I handled things, was going from this angry, gruff, mean strength and conditioning coach that I thought I was supposed to be, and I hated doing that, to actually being able to be myself and have fun and enjoy my job,
right?
As the person that I am.
And you become more effective when you do that.
Exactly, because then it's genuine. They
It's
can see through the phoniness. Look, I can be this angry, gruff guy. I'm like 5'7". Nobody's gonna be afraid of me. Like
I got you.
it's all an act, and they knew it. So when I'm
I,
able to just be myself and have fun, it's so much more effective because it's genuine,
well, I
and
will
it's
say,
coming from a place of my where I care. And they know that I care about them in that.
let's
So
see.
when I can be myself, yeah,
You listen to any of our podcasts, and you'll learn two things about me anyway. One, I'm an inch shorter than you. So
tough
two,
life, man. I'm telling you.
but two, one of the things that I said about this job when you do it, any coaching job, but specifically this one, you have to care, because
Yeah,
if you don't care, dude, athletes will pick that out really fast. Doesn't mean you have to be who you are. I'm a
hmm
little bit more stoic. I'm not. That doesn't mean I don't laugh or won't, you know, allow joking in the weight room. Not clowning. There's a difference, because we want to be
big
safe.
difference. Yep,
We want to be safe. But if somebody gets a joke, I'm gonna laugh too.
yep.
So my biggest impact, I think, over my entire career has been with defensive linemen and offensive linemen, the big guys. I've trained skill guys and all that other stuff, but I train those guys like I train the skill guys. I know what their skill set is. I know what they need. Um, I know what they need as far as strength and weight and stuff like that. But they also have to be able to deal with the athletes on the field, the guys that are out there moving. So they need some of that as well. And the guys that I've had success with, that have had success that work with me, realize, hey, you know what? I don't really like all this running, but man, this season has been better since I started training this way instead of the way I was training before.
Yeah.
Or, wow, I feel like I'm a lot more conditioned. And you know what? I lost 3 inches in my pants size. I'm 10 pounds heavier, and I move a lot better.
Yep.
So that's because I care, and I'm just being who I am. I'm not a, you know, like I said, like you said, you're more of a happy guy. Don't go in there frowning and being gruff, because that's gonna look fake and be fake.
And that's what I tried to do, and it was fake. It absolutely
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And they knew it, you know?
For me, the opposite is the same. If I walk in and I'm just growling and mean, um, most of the time the look on my face tells you I'm not serious. You know what I mean? Hey,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on, you
Yeah.
got to get some work done, man. What are you doing? You over there looking like Fred Flintstone or whatever.
Yep.
I'll say things, and then the mood is like, oh, he ain't serious. But I'm not smiling, because I just, people will tell you I didn't smile till I was 35 years old.
And I think we're hitting on something here that's it's talked about, but I don't think it's really emphasized, is relationship building in sports, right?
Yes.
You've got to be genuine in who you are. And this is another thing in sports science that kind of drives me crazy when I see postings for jobs and they're looking for like a data scientist or a computer scientist. No, you got to be a coach. Your sports scientist needs to be a coach
I've
who
seen
understands
it hard.
people.
Yes. I've seen it be hard for those guys coming in, especially back in 2018, 19, and they want to hire a data scientist to collect force plate data on blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And that guy comes in and he has a different demeanor. He hasn't been around sports.
Yep.
He expects everybody, if I tell you to stand over here, I expect you to stand right there until I call you. What athlete is going to do that? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
let's be honest. These guys and girls are free willed, strong minded, and you better earn some respect before you start bossing them around.
Yes. I'll give you a good example here of what I mean by this, right? Is my first week at Minnesota United, I and I'm in our coach's office every day, right? Our former coach was an English guy, very, very short, very just get to the point and be done with it, right? I came in and I dropped a 7-page report on his desk, and he looks at me and says, "No." That was it. Just no. too much. And I'm looking at it now. Yeah, it was too much, right? You got to be able to adjust and adapt to those types of things. All of that information that I wanted to present was valid. It was valuable, but let's just get down to the point, right? And I don't, as a coach, you need to adjust to that. I sit in a medical meeting first thing in the morning. Then I go down to the locker room and get everything ready for the players, and I talk to them and chat with them throughout the time that I'm setting up. Takes about 30 minutes. Then we're out on the field where I'm following our coaches around and giving them information the whole time. Sometimes players need things. Then I go back and I'm sitting down and trying to get data gathered while everybody else is at lunch, so that when they're back from lunch, I can go to the coaches again and give them a report for the day. And you're interacting with so many different pieces, and maybe I'll get pulled into our general manager's office for something, and our nutritionist will need something from me.
Right.
You just need to be able to interact with so many different people, and you have to be a coach to understand that. I think and I'm not saying a data scientist can't do this. I'm not saying that they can't, but it's a different type of person, a different skill set to be in a locker room and have a guy to overhear two guys talking about how he broke up with his girlfriend and he's having a bad day, and
Now
to
you
adapt to that.
now
And,
you have
we're supposed to do testing today, and his numbers are going to suck
yeah.
because of that. And if you don't understand that, then and how to work with that athlete through those things as a coach, you're going to just look at the numbers and say, oh, his numbers sucked. He needs, to do this and this and this. Well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe his cat died. I don't know.
But you never know in that case. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that the good coaches understand, and I was lucky enough to have some growing up and coming through my formative years, the good coaches understand that everybody's different, but everybody's the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So everybody's going to react to things different. They're just different. They're different people. But you have to treat everybody the same to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Now, the good coaches also understand once you get to that degree, once you get to that everybody has to do this, not everybody can do this, or not everybody's going to get away with this, or you don't know why he got away with that or she got away with that. That's not for you to know. And that's not stuff I can just throw out there. Well, Susie's numbers are down this week, but I'm not telling the coach. I'm not telling anybody. The coach probably already knows. He probably told me. You know what I mean? The skill coach, but everybody else doesn't need to know why she's down and she's not being punished for dogging it. You don't need to know that. So, and that's how you earn players' respect. And when that happens enough, players understand, hey, don't worry about Susie. She'll be all right. You just need to do X. And they'll start policing each other.
John Wooden had a great great quote on this. One of the best coaches of all time. I mean, you can make that argument. John Wooden's the greatest coach of all time in any sport. But he said that, some players are going to get away with some things. Some players you're going to have your expectations for everybody. Some players are going to get away with some things.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to be. I'm sorry. We had one player with United who just refused to wear his GPS sometimes. And I would make a point that every time this happened, I would hand it to him on the field right before training started. So the coaches saw, he's got it. This was his choice, right? I had my job. My hands are clean.
Here's your GPS, buddy.
Yep. You know what the consequence was for him? Nothing. Okay. You don't want to wear it?
And he scored 4 goals in the last 3 games.
Exactly.
So why do you think he had no consequences?
Yeah. They were required. It was a fine, or we had a wheel you had to spin to get a consequence. It was just silly stuff, right? But he never had to, and there was a reason, And it's going to be like that. I'm sorry, that's the unfortunate reality of how it is in athletics sometimes.
So what would you tell if you had to tell young professionals or a young you? Let's answer both of those. To young professionals from your perspective now, what would you tell them? And what would you have told a young you?
Man, I think we already covered a young me, but just be yourself. Be yourself. Be who you are. That honestly is probably the biggest thing that hindered, not necessarily hindered, but I wasn't enjoying my career. I
Okay.
wasn't enjoying myself for the first couple of years of doing it because I wasn't me. So we already covered that. Maybe I'll think of something
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
here,
Okay.
but there's that. To tell a young professional is don't be afraid to make mistakes. I think we always think we have to be so perfect in everything that we do. Like mistakes are
Yep.
gonna happen. It doesn't matter. Like those are learning experiences. Those are learning opportunities. So stay humble, work hard, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. And when you do something and it ends up being a mistake, be able to explain why you did it and then learn from it, right? I didn't just do this because I was just throwing things at the wall to see what stick. I did it because I thought this, and this is why I was wrong. So
Right.
learn from those mistakes. Don't just be, do whatever you want. And hey, I'm not afraid to make a mistake. I don't care. No, I mean, know what you're
Yeah. You got to
doing.
care because you got to be able to tell. You got to be able to tell your boss, what you're going to do about it.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
I made this mistake. It didn't work for this reason. So this is how we're going to try to correct it.
Yeah. Yep. And I just think that that's how we learn. That's how we grow and understand things. If everything always works out perfect, do you understand why?
Yeah.
Why did these things all work out the way they were supposed to? You don't know because it's always just gone that way. That's just always how it's been, right? We learn through mistakes. Mistakes are actually a good thing, right? It's
Yeah.
like going back to what we talked about in the very beginning is applying some kind of stimulus to get an adaptation, right? If
Right.
we don't make a mistake, if we don't dress ourselves in that way, we're not going to grow. We're not going to learn, right? So mistakes are actually okay. Don't just go willy nilly doing whatever you want and seeing what sticks, but don't be afraid to try things, make mistakes, and learn and grow from that.
Why is it important? Why is it important in this profession, in this field, to enjoy what you do?
It's tough because it's tough work. Like I, there have been times where I've talked to my wife and I've said, look, would I just be better off finding a 9 to 5 job that pays good money and I'm sitting behind a desk all day? And she's like, absolutely not.
Please don't do that.
It's easier. It's probably easier just to sit behind a desk at an office and do that. But this job is tough. So you've got to be able to enjoy it and don't fake it. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, there's other things you can do within this field, but not in coaching. You can get into there's so many tech companies or equipment sales and all that where you're still on the field. But if you're not enjoying it, don't fake it. It is so physically and emotionally demanding. There's, our preseason, for instance, last year, I was here for a week, and then we went to Orlando for 3 weeks. I was back for a week, and then went to Palm Springs for 10 days. Right. So that was in altogether basically a month and a half. I was home for a week and a half.
Yeah.
And I was away from my wife and kids for the rest of that, and then the travel and the long hours and everything. And it's tough. If you're not enjoying it, there's plenty of other things you can do in the field, but don't just do it because you want to be in the sport or whatever, right? You've got to find enjoyment in your work. You've got to find enjoyment in your life. And I think there's people who are out there who would be happier in another field within the sports performance realm, but are faking it through. And I just don't think that's any way to do it.
Well, I think the fake it till you make it mentality that cropped up, there for a while. I think really not just our industry, but hurt a lot of the perception, especially of the younger kids coming up. You can't fake anything if you're trying to be a professional at it. You get exposed too soon and too often if you're trying to fake it. So then it becomes one of those things where you're not happy doing it. There's, you find nothing but fault in everything that goes on. And then, who wants to work with you? Who wants to work around you? And God forbid you're training an athlete, because at that point, you're not giving them the best you can, which is what they require in order to get better.
Yes. I'll give you a perfect example from a different profession. Okay. I turn on shows when I'm at home, like doing chores and stuff. And I was doing dishes probably a couple weeks ago. And I turned on one of these like restaurant renovation shows, right?
Right.
And the guy who owned the restaurant hated it. Absolutely hated it. He was in the kitchen all the time, just cooking from open to close, hated it. He thought he was going to love it, and he didn't. And so what they ended up doing was taking him out of the kitchen and letting him just manage the restaurant and interact with the people and get out of the kitchen. Well, yeah, sometimes you get into it because you think this is exactly what I want to do. And then you get into it, and all of the challenges and stresses of it, they're not what you expected it to be.
Right.
It's okay. That's okay. You can get out of the kitchen, right? And find something else within that realm.
That's a great analogy. He went out to the front of the house and became a superstar.
Yes, they found a good replacement for him in the kitchen. He went out to the front of the house, exactly, and it changed everything. Totally changed everything. And
that staying within that analogy, that probably changed the whole ambiance and mood in the whole restaurant. Just like you can do in a weight room, if you come in there and you're miserable, even if you're not walking around telling people you're miserable and you're trying to do your job, you're not shirking your responsibilities, but you're not happy, and it's obvious.
And it's obvious. Because then the energy's gone, right? The energy coming from you and throughout the room. It's a real tangible thing. Like, and the athletes can feel that, and it's gone. Right.
And usually a lot of times they're the first ones to tell you, hey, what's up, coach? Nothing. Well, what's going on with you, coach? Nothing. Well, they're asking those kind of questions because they want to know, why does it feel different in here?
Mm-hmm.
Why have the last 5 training sessions we ain't had the lights or the music? If that's what you did all the time, you know what I mean? Why are we not doing that anymore?
And that's an interesting point you bring up, in that we talk all the time. You hear it on every podcast. You got to care about your athletes. You got to love your athletes. Well, you know what?
Right.
They love you too. Like, they care about you too. Like, let them care about you.
Yeah.
If you're having a bad day, let them give you a hug. Let them pick you up. Like,
our
jobs are stressful. They're hard.
It gives them some, what is it? It's not, it gives them some, I'm looking for a word, man, but it's not accountability, because that's different. But it gives them something to hold. They're helping too. They have a part in what's going on. So a lot of them want to care about you, or want to return that or reciprocate that care, if you will allow it.
That's what I was going to say. Is you got to allow it. Don't be that gruff, tough guy that doesn't want a hug. Right. Yeah. Don't be that gruff, tough guy that won't let someone ask, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm a big mental health guy. That's a thing in my family that's impacted us, and take care of it. Like, and let people care about you.
I am too, and so much so that I pursued a doctorate late in my career in psychology.
Yeah,
that's how big I am into it, especially in today's world. But for athletes, my daughter, when I trained her, and we were out for a training day one time, and it was 400s and 300s, I think, or 400s and 200s, and we had 3 each. It was just terrible. The first 2 is terrible, and then she broke down. She said, "Dad, I'm just tired," and she started crying. And I was like, "Okay." I said, "Okay, mental day, because you're done physically right now. There's nothing we can accomplish today that can't wait."
Yeah.
So we got to go. So we sat there right there at the bottom of the steps, and for that whole training time, probably longer than that because she's my daughter, all we did was talk about why she was tired, what was going on, what was happening, what was, and when I learned that with her, I started paying attention for it with other athletes.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, when she was talking, how much of the reason she was tired was physical and how much of it was emotional?
I'm going to tell you, physically was probably 20%.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
80% of it was, emotional. Yeah. And it was, her schedule, her play in the last game. It wasn't even a lot of things you think about, like your boyfriend or all that. It wasn't, but it was all stuff that was related to what she was trying to accomplish. And I said, "Well, we need to take a break." So so we took that mental day and we took the rest of the week. So it's like a Wednesday through a Friday.
Yeah.
She came back because we didn't do anything. Yeah, we didn't do anything on Saturday and Sunday. So she came back on. She actually went out and ran on Saturday because she felt like, man, if I don't run on Saturday, it's gonna suck on Monday.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was by then she had made the turn, and she was feeling better about things, and and sometimes all it takes is just stop everything. 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever the case may be. I probably gave her longer than I would have suggested for anyone else, but of course, again, that's your daughter, so.
And that's another good point. I love that story. That's such a great example of what we're talking about, of being a coach first, and for your case, a dad, but it's a good example of having to be adaptable as well, right? Before the season, lay everything out. Here's how the season's going to go. And it never goes exactly like that. Right?
Never.
Things change.
You at best, you hope that you can. Here's what I tell professionals when I'm speaking directly to professionals all the time. I said, don't get yourself all wired up about having the perfect plan. I said, because your perfect plan is only going to be good for about 85% of the people that use it. I said, the other 5% on one end, 10% on another end. I said, you're going to have to make changes to your plan in the midst of the other 85% of the people executing your plan. This person might need more. This person might need less. This person might need something different. This person might not be amenable to your practice. You have to be open to all of that. So the best laid strength and conditioning plans, performance plans, whatever, are only going to reach consistently about 85% of the people. And those are the good ones.
And I think that's generous too, 85%.
Yeah, I mean I'm saying that, with all my brothers and sisters in mind, thinking that you guys are going to get to the 85%. But
hopefully,
but you're right. That is generous. In many circles, if you're coaching and you reach 50%, you're doing good.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely agree. And I think it just goes back to being adaptable. Your plans have to be written in pencil because they're going to change. There's a road trip. I remember we were coming home after a game, and our charter plane was 4 hours late. So we didn't get in until 4 hours later than we thought. We didn't sleep, so that Monday things had to change.
Yeah.
We had to adjust because there were problems and hiccups along the way. Things happen. You got to be able to adjust to whatever your circumstance and situation is.
Yeah, the ability to adjust and the ability to adjust off of the adjustment, is critical, because that first move you make might not be the problem solver. It may just get you past the train wreck.
Yes.
And then you have to adjust again in order to get there you go, to get back on track. Yep. I knew we was thinking alike.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep. Because sometimes you hit that side track, but you got to get back on the main track.
Yeah.
And that side track doesn't always lead to the main track.
Yep. Exactly. And I don't know, this just popped into my head. I don't know why I've just thought about this, but I see a lot of times people going off of like research on what they're doing and basing everything they do off of research. Well, sometimes what you see based off of what you're doing doesn't align with what the research says, so you got to adjust. I'm never going to find a research article on the exact athletes we have training in the environment that we have. I mean, I've got almost a foot of snow outside right now, and there's supposed to be more this weekend, right? The temperature just dropped like 40 degrees.
Yeah.
I'm never going to find research on that, training exactly the way we do with the athletes we have. And so when you see these things that don't align with what research says it's supposed to, you got to adjust. And the best research is what you see, the evidence that you see.
Right. Because
it's going to be specific to your team and exactly the players that you have and what you're doing. Again, I don't know why that just popped into my head from what we were talking about before, but when I see everybody base everything off of, well, this is what the research says. Well, okay, but what does your evidence say?
Yeah. How are you seeing it? And if the research says this, is that what you're getting in your casual observation?
Yes, exactly. One of the best, I don't know if I ever could have been introduced to peer reviewed research better than when my first class in college, it was that same professor I reached out to and asked him about switching over to sports science from strength conditioning. But he gave us an assignment. He said, look up any topic. You pick your topic, find research to back it up, and write it was like a 2 or 3 page paper. That was it. Simple instructions, right? So my topic I picked was protein timing. Is there a specific timing that you need to take protein to maximize its benefits after a workout? So I'm digging into research and I'm looking at peer reviewed journals and stuff. And I've got one here that says one thing and one here that says another thing. And so I went to my professor and I said, hey, I've got these 2 papers and they say different things. And his response was everything I needed to know. He looks at me and says, yep, that was it.
Right? Exactly.
Exactly. That was everything I needed to know. I understood right there.
Because you can find peer-reviewed articles and you know, a lot of times the question is the source.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to for me anyway. So if I find one that says you need to take your protein at this time and another one says no, you need to take it at this time, and there's a big swing between the two, I start looking at the sources on who's not who wrote it, who reviewed it. Yeah. Who reviewed that? Okay. And why did they say that you take it at this time? And then it's the old onion skin trick. You keep peeling back the onion skin, and sooner or later you get to the good stuff or you get to the bad stuff. And, you know, what I tell a lot, especially a lot of young researchers is, hey, you got to peel back the onion skin. I said, but then when you do, don't just question the one you disagree with. Question both of them. And then when you find out where the source is from, question the source. See what kind of background that source has. You know, if it's coming from the you know, Catfish Creek University all world men's, you know, underwater snake tackling champions, you know, that's eventually where you heard that. No, man.
I want a Catfish Creek University hoodie now.
But
you know, and I'll go on to that is just say, don't just go to the conclusions, right?
Oh, look man, you missed too much.
Look at the study design. Like, there's so much more. The conclusions don't tell you anything.
The conclusions, oftentimes, I used to argue with my professors at both my undergrad, at both my master's level and my doctorate level. I said, I can make these stats tell me anything I want them to tell me. I said, why should I believe certain things? And they would their response would be, why should you? And I'm like, come on, man. Y'all gonna do me like that? Why should you? You tell me why you should believe it. So that's when I got to the onion skin theory is like, okay, I need to find out where this really came from. There was somebody who started this first because nothing is new.
Yeah.
I'll take that lie back to the people who have found new things. Little is new. So it's been addressed somewhere. Does it cost you a little more time and effort? Yeah. But is that time and effort worth it to you? Well, if you want to know, using your example, if you want to know when the best time is to, you know, take protein, you probably want to know about that information. You want to know if it's from, you know, Johns Hopkins University and the study in 1998, or if it's from Catfish Creek, like we said, and they was just sitting down there while they was fishing and came up with it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I do when I look at research papers is I'll read the abstract, then I'll go right to the conclusions, and then read through the body of the paper because I know what we're looking for. Right? Yeah, here's what we got.
I got you.
How did we get there? How did we get there? Right? What was the design of the study to get your conclusions? What was your population? What were your methods to get?
Yeah, because that's a destination. That's a great approach because oftentimes and I've not done that purposely ever, but a few times I've read the conclusions first and then went back and read the body of the paper, and I'm going, how did you get to there doing that?
Yeah.
You know,
yep, and that'll answer a lot of questions.
Yeah. That's a great point to do for as all you young researchers and would be researchers and or professionals out there. when you're doing your literature review, try that technique. Because I bet I wish I would have tried it back in the day, but I wasn't smart enough to come up with it.
It's just, and one of my professors told me this. I don't remember who, but I learned it in college. Is you know what you're looking for. You know what they got. How did they get there?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
The way we do things sometimes, we get stuck in the way we do things, and we do it because that's the way we do it, and that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's never a good reason to do something there's never a good reason. Damn, you'll say this right. That is never a good reason to not change something because that's the way we've always done it.
Yep.
Okay. Is it the best way? There's probably better ways, but we've always done it this way. Well, if you feel like there's probably better ways, isn't it incumbent upon you as a professional to at least make the adjustments towards changing it for the better?
Yeah.
That's what I've always thought.
I cannot stand. That's the way we've always done it.
That hurts.
It just makes me.
I'm glad to hear that hurts you as much as it hurts me.
Yeah.
All right, Craig.
There's a better way.
All right, Craig, man. I hate to stop us, but the production people will get mad at me if I run too far over.
There's so much more I want to talk about.
Well, good. Because that means we can have you back if you'd be willing to come.
Yep, we'll do it again.
Because I would definitely enjoy that talk and maybe get into a little bit more the USL and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just talking about our experiences there. But look, man, it's been great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sticking in there with me during the scheduling process. And then don't be afraid to drop a note if question, statement. Hey, I found this. Check this out. Anything. I'm always willing to talk to everybody because I believe in this profession. We are always better together and working together than we can ever be apart.
Of course.
So,
thank you for having me on. Tell Chris I said hi.
I will definitely do that, and thank you.